All right, guys, next lesson on the board is going to be comparing fractions. Some of this is going to seem very familiar to you. Sometimes the book goes back and has you review some of these concepts so that you can apply them as you're moving forward. So some of this may seem very familiar to you, and you may have seen me work with it with 4th grade also, but don't be afraid. We always need review on material to make sure that we've got it conquered so we can move on to the next item. So when you are comparing fractions, you have to make sure that you have a common denominator. Now there are several ways for us to figure out a common denominator. The first way would be able to find the least common multiple. Well, we just practiced that in our last lesson. So you can use LCM, least common multiple. For number 1, it says Trevor made 2 out of 3 goals and Tyler made 5 out of 6. So 2 out of 3 or 5 out of 6. So this is Trevor and this is Tyler. We would like to be able to see who made more goals. We can't do that until we find a common denominator. We can use least common multiple to help us. So we can come down here and we can list multiples of these numbers until we find one that they have in common. So multiples of 3. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. Multiples of 6. 6, 12, 18, 24, and 30. We are going to be looking for least common multiple. What number do they have in common? The smallest number that they both share. Well, right here it is. You notice that the smallest number that they both share is a 6. This means we're going to use 6 as the denominator for our fraction. Now, we're lucky because Tyler's number is already in 6, so his is done. I'm just going to put a box around it to remind me. That one's done. I don't have to do anything to it. Well, Trevor's is not. I need to take 2/3 and I need to turn it into 6ths. So this is finding an equivalent fraction. So this is what we know so far, right? We want to take this fraction and turn it into 6ths. Now remember, with an equivalent fraction, whatever you do to the denominator, you have to do to the numerator and vice versa. So how did we turn a 3 into a 6? Well, the only 2 ways to do that would be in finding equivalent fractions is either multiplication or division. Now, multiplication makes bigger numbers, division makes smaller numbers. So if we're making this number larger, we know we have to be multiplying. So 3 times what is equal to 6? Well, 3 times 2. If I do it to the bottom, I have to do it to the top. So now I'm going to find the new numerator. 2 times 2 is 4. This is my new fraction for Trevor. So up here, instead of having 2/3, I'm going to cross that out because I just changed it into 6ths and it was 4/6. Now we can compare. Who made more goals? Trevor, who made 4 out of 6, or Tyler, who made 5 out of 6? Well, guess what, friends? Tyler was the one who made more goals. So finding the least common multiple can help you make a new fraction, an equivalent fraction, so then you can compare, because remember, they always have to have the same denominator to be able to be compared. All right? The next thing that we need to be able to do is we can use a fraction bar to help us see this. So we can list multiples, we can find an equivalent fraction, or another way, which is much more visual, is to create a fraction bar. So when you do a fraction bar, you have to make sure that the 2 bars that you're comparing are the same size, because otherwise it won't work. So this is going to be Trevor. I'm going to call him TR. And this is going to be Tyler. We're going to call him TY. Now, if we have to go back to our original fractions, which was Trevor was 2/3 and Tyler was 5/6, we're going to use that to help us show it on the fraction bar. Now, if I have to show 2/3 for Trevor, that means I'm going to split this fraction bar into thirds, into 3 pieces, because of this denominator right here. So if I split it into thirds, and he got 2/3, I'm going to show you by shading it. There's Trevor's. Now Tyler's has to be split into 6ths, right? Because that's the denominator of that problem. So let's see. Try to do this as accurately as you can. So we can represent it the right way. So Tyler has 5/6. So I'm going to color in 5 of the boxes, shade them in anyway. And you can see by comparing these two fraction bars that Tyler did make more goals than Trevor did. So you've got several different methods to be able to show which fraction is larger. You can use least common multiple, you can find an equivalent fraction, or you can use fraction bars to help you figure it out. Let me flip this over and see if there's something else we need on the back. So there's one other set of fractions here. Let's try this again so we have a little bit more practice, okay? We're going to get a new set of fractions and we're going to compare them. Okay, so on the back you have a set of fractions of 3/5 and 1/2. They want to know which is larger. So to compare fractions, we have to find a common denominator, something that they share. So the first way we learned how to do that was with least common multiple. We're going to list the multiples of each number. So that means we're counting by 5s here. 5, 10, 15, 20. I usually only do about 5 of them. Normally you can find it within that, but you can keep going as far as you need to. Now let's list the multiples of 2. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Now what we're looking for is what number do both of these guys share. So what I'm looking through, I notice that 10 is the first number I come across. That is the least common multiple for these two numbers. This means this is my new denominator, and I have to change both of these fractions into tenths to be able to compare them because they have to have the same denominator. So let's do it. Let's take 3/5 and let's find an equivalent fraction. So take the original fraction, we're going to turn it into tenths. What did I do to 5 to make it into 10? Well, I multiplied by 2. If I do it to the bottom, I do it to the top. 3 times 2 is 6. This is my new fraction. It's the same amount, it's an equivalent fraction, but now I can use it. Let's do it to 1/2. So start with 1/2 and turn it into tenths. What did I do to the 2 to make it a 10? Well, I multiplied by 5. Do the same thing to the top. 1 times 5 is 5. This is my new fraction. It's an equivalent fraction for 1/2. Now I can look at these two fractions, 6/10 and 5/10. Well, if they're measured the same way in tenths, we can see now that we can look at the numerators. A 6 is larger than a 5, so 6/10 is larger than 5/10. If you need to, you can draw fraction bars, right? Make sure they're the same size. If we go back to the original fractions, the first one was 3/5. This one was 1/2. Let's show that. So because this is in fifths, we have to split it up into 5 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one is going to be split right in half. Okay, let's see. The fraction bar got a little skimpy there. So 3 pieces are going to be shaded. And then 1/2 is going to be shaded here. I made 2 pieces because of that denominator. And you can see that 3/5 is larger than 1/2, which is exactly what we figured out down here by making equivalent fractions. I think that'll do, you guys. If you have any questions, you can always have parents give me a call or send me an email. Thanks, guys.